welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Jessica at Syosset Library Turn the Page podcast, and I'm here with a wonderful Syosset alum. Introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kathleen Kim. I also go by Kathy. Graduated class of 97, Syosset High School.
Very cool. Welcome to Turn the Page. Welcome back to Syosset. So before we get into what you're doing now, which is awesome stuff, you went through the Syosset schools, and your elementary school was
Robbins Lane Elementary,
and from there you went to
HBT Thompson,
and then to Syosset High School. And I was Robbins Lane, then I went to Southwoods because I was on the other side of the tracks, and SHS. So before,
wait, I think we were in their second. Wait, we were in second grade together? We go way back.
We go way back. We were, yes. Kathleen and I were on the playground together. We were in Robbins Lane. So I act like I didn't know the answer to that question, but I do. But I'm doing the boilerplate question and answer session of this. But yeah, we do go way back. But then, like, you went to Thompson and I went to Southwoods. Yeah. And then came back together in the end, because it always does.
That's right.
So right now you're doing some really cool stuff. What do you work on now?
Okay. So I'm a puppeteer. I'm a television puppeteer, and I'm not sure how I got here. Because, we're the same age. I'm about to be 40 this year, and not what I studied to do. I went to school for production and children's education, try to get into the other side of TV. And, I was at Nickelodeon out of school, and, during the huge, sort of 2008, 2009 recession, everybody got laid off. And then, I found myself just trying to look for work. And as it turns out, this is when the sort of reality TV, trend was booming. And so there's a ton of reality show work in New York. You don't have to be in LA, to be in production regularly. So I've been in reality TV for a long time. I still do it. But this year I've been able to work pretty much full time as a puppeteer for the first time. And yeah, I've been on Sesame Street and have gotten to do some other really amazing projects over the last year.
That's pretty incredible. So when you, did you do, acting stuff in Syosset High School? I think you were in, Alice in Wonderland the same year that I was, when they did a production of that.
Oh my God, we did that together. Yes. Okay. So, I was always a bit of a spaz, and had interest in drama and stuff like that. But my mom, being a strict, typical Korean immigrant parent, wouldn't let me go out for drama. And so it wasn't until senior year, and it was the second play. So it's not even the big fall Shakespeare play. It's the whatever play at the end of the year. And I'm like, Mom, this is my last chance to go out for a high school play. Can I? She's like, fine. We already know you're not going into Ivy League, so whatever. And so I got to do Alice in Wonderland. That was my only stage experience. And then, honestly, Sesame Street, was a huge influence to me as an immigrant kid. I pretty much learned English watching Sesame. And, it doesn't just teach you ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's it's really comedy, and
it's fantastic,
and art
empathy
and music. Yeah. And so it was such a huge, and that and Mr. Rogers were two gigantic influences in my life, which is why I went into television in the first place. But I and I always had an interest in Jim Henson and the Muppets and things like that, but I never in a million years dreamed that that's something that normal people got to do and get paid to do. It seemed like a pipe dream, like being like an astronaut or, you know, being an NBA player or something like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like a huge dream. And so I never thought I would do it, but so the way I got into puppetry, and like, you know, I do little things here and there growing up, like, you know, make a little puppet for my church Christmas show, or like if there was like a video extra credit project, I would like do stupid puppets and, you know, but like, you know, just fooling around.
But pre-puppeteering, really.
Was that pre-puppeteering for sure. And like an old Syosset alum, a friend of yours also, Jay Craidman, and I, we would like make puppets out of like literally just wrapping our winter scarf around our arm and putting glasses on it. And suddenly it was like a character. And so that was always something that was like kind of in me, you know, something that I liked and I was good at. But I, you know, again, this is like, who the hell gets paid to wiggle dolls? You know, not normal people. And so like when I was like around 30, I want to say, my husband, Brian, he's in television. He's not like in the entertainment side, but he's like more like network side. And he used to take a lot of improv classes at the UCB.
Upright Citizens Brigade. Yeah.
And it's a big improv school and theater in New York City. Anybody who's into comedy kind of like comes through there.
And they've launched so many people.
They've launched 1 million people. Like, I think back when he was taking it, like sort of, you know, around like 2000, late aughts / early teens or whatever, like a lot of those people like end up on like, you see a bunch of them on like The Good Place or in commercials or in movies. It's crazy. Like it's launched so many people. Like Rachel Bloom on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Like she was in a class with him, and like the woman who plays, Karen, is it Karen on Good Place? Darcy, I forget her last name, but like,
Janet. Janet,
right.
She looks like a Karen, but she's a Janet.
She looks like a Karen. But, yeah, like these are all people that were kind of coming up through that time. And so I never did improv. I never took like really acting classes or anything like that. Again, I'm just like a spaz. And, my husband was taking a bunch of UCB classes. He was on a bunch of teams. He was always performing or whatever. And I complained that I never got to see him. And he was like, well, let's take a class together. And he found a random class. It was like teaching puppetry to improv players to do puppet improv. And we're like, what a weird niche, random ass thing to do. And I remember there was like a prerequisite for taking at least like a 101 basic improv class. I'm like, I've never taken an improv class before. So I like went and like there was like one theater called the Magnet Theater. No, is it the Magnet? Yeah, they give like free introductory workshops, you know, hoping that you'll come and pay for a class. So I took that class and then like asked the puppet teacher, like, okay, I took this intro. Is that okay? And he's like, yeah, sure, it's fine. Like, I don't really care. And so anyway, we took this improv, this puppetry class for improv. And this teacher, his name is David Fino. He, you know, saw something in me and, you know, wanted to continue working with me. And so he would bring me on to little gigs here and there, you know, to assist him on like a pilot or a music video or whatever that he was doing. Nothing big. There was this, it was going to be an indie movie, but it ended up being bought by Yahoo TV, like original content for Yahoo TV.
Right.
It's called The Fuzz.
Yes.
It was kind of like it's like in general, like cursing, you know, blinking puppets are not my thing, but that's if that is, then this is for you.
Right.
Actually featured Rachel Bloom and John Gabris and Nate Lang, who was in that what was that movie with J.K. Simmons about the drums?
I can't remember. I do love him though.
Yes. Anyway, the bad guy in that drum movie, who was like the former first lead, he's in that movie. And then one of the guys from Sonny from Sopranos. It was really random. But, you know, we did like a month or so shooting. And I was kind of the main assist. And that meant like I would do all the background characters. I would do right hands for stuff. And we can get into all that stuff. And I thought like, wow, I got to live my dream for a month. And well, now I'll go back to my regular job working for like, you know, freelancing Travel Channel and like Discovery Channel shows. But that was cool that I got to do that, you know, and I thought that was pretty much it. But then like, what happened is in 2014, Sesame Street, once in a blue moon, they do this a little more often now, but back in the day, it was like once every like 7 or 8 years, they would sort of put out like a call to amateur puppeteers asking them for audition tapes to, for like a free 3-day puppetry workshop, which they say like isn't an audition, and it's not an audition, but it's for them to sort of like see who's out there and see who's trainable, under kind of like their, you know, methodology or whatever. Because like regular puppetry on stage is completely different from TV puppetry. TV puppetry requires like a whole other skill set. And so I'd done a little bit of this monitor work with the Fuzz. So I had a little bit of experience. I truly was not going to submit a tape to this workshop because I knew that I wasn't good enough, you know?
Oh, you thought you thought so.
Yes, I was just like, if I get rejected, I will just be heartbroken. So I better not do it.
Right.
But then I found out a bunch of people who had taken my class who were like, you know, again, not necessarily performers. They all had like kind of like regular schmegular day jobs and were just like, you know, Muppet fans. And so they were all sending in tapes. And all talented in different ways. I was like, if these guys get into the workshop and I never sent in a tape, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And so when I found out that everybody else was sending in tapes, I'm like, screw it. Like, what's the harm?
Right.
Day before the deadline, I cobbled together something real quick and I got in and, you know, again, like go to the workshop and it was like a dream. It was like taught by Marty Robinson, who is Snuffleupagus and Telly Monster since like the late 70s, early 80s.
Wow.
Matt Vogel. Yeah. Matt Vogel, who is the current Kermit the Frog, who is a bunch of other characters. He's the current Count. He's the puppet captain. Oh, and he's also Big Bird. No big deal.
Nice.
And then Peter Lintz, who is has been working with the Muppets since like the early 90s. And he was like whistling Walt in the new movies and stuff. And he's brilliant as well. And so I come in, I'm like, I have no business being here. Like I ride up the elevator with this nice guy and I'm like, oh, you know, are you here for the workshop? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm really excited. He's like, yeah, me too. And we walk into the workshop together and then like, you know, oh, Jason, oh, I loved you in Avenue Q. And I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm like, and there were all these people who knew all these, you know, big Muppet, you know, sort of heroes. And I'm like, I have no business being here. I'm not an entertainer. I did not go to school for theater or any of this stuff. And, you know, I learned a whole lot. I felt both encouraged, by like maybe talents that I'm like, oh, maybe I do have something, but also like, oh my God, I have so much to learn and to grow to be good enough to be like, you know, doing this. And so once again, I just like out of the Fuzz, I was like, well, I got to touch a Muppet. I got to meet these Muppeteers. I got to live my dream. Well, back to my regular life. But then like the next season, they started pulling people from that workshop to come in for a day or 2 or 3. And, you know, just have them like kind of do right hands of puppet. When I say right hands, it's like, literally doing the right hand of a puppet. So like Cookie Monster or Ernie, or like the best way to picture is like the Swedish Chef. Swedish Chef has like those 2 human hands.
Yes.
And so Cookie Monster and Ernie are live hand puppets. They're not just like arms attached to rods, which are traditional Muppets. They have like actual hands filling out gloves so that they can pick up things and whatever.
Right.
And so if you picture it, Cookie Monster, say just because he's very popular, David Redman has his right hand inside Cookie Monster's mouth. So he's controlling blah, 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 blah. And then his left hand is in Cookie Monster's left hand. and that means his right arm is just flopping out to the side. And so an assist or a right hand will snug up right underneath Cookie Monster, right up against David, and fill in that right arm. And we're looking at a monitor.
Yeah.
Matching what they do live.
Which is crazy.
And, so, yeah.
And that's all happening above your heads, literally.
Well, yeah, it's above our head. And that's why the only way that we can see in TV puppetry is with a monitor.
Right.
And so if you ever see like the old, you know, like documentaries of like Jim Henson, or if you ever get to like visit like a set where there's puppets, you'll just see all these little monitors like everywhere. Because everyone kind of has to like face their body in like a different way in order to like position themselves in a good, you know, position their puppet correctly.
Right.
And so you have to have like a monitor where you can see, because it's easy to forget that they're not actually alive and that they don't actually see where they are. It's like we're manipulating like a prop, you know, but making it like, you know, like picking up I don't know, like a pillow with a face on it, like, you know, but the pillow has to like match your eye line, and it has to look like it's alive, and you have to make sure that you, the human manipulating the puppet, is not in the frame at all. And so
it's just amazing, and you know, just how much of a life the puppets really do take on. It's I mean, it's been around for a while, that style of puppeteering.
I mean, Jim Henson really created it. That style of like that, you know, the mouth moving and moving the arms with the rods or with the live hands. That was for TV, at least. That was Jim Henson. He kind of found that through being able to do commercials with it, and people loved them. But yeah, it wasn't something anybody knew how to do, because we're not looking at what the puppet sees. We're not seeing, you know, the space around it. We are moving it and manipulating it based on what the camera is seeing. And so oftentimes what we're doing is completely backwards. So like somebody starting out doing monitor work, and this is me, this is everybody. You put your puppet up and you're like, oh, I'm crooked or I'm not center. And you overcorrect completely the wrong way. You're like, I got to move to the right. So you move your actual body to the right. You're like, oh, no, it's not based on where I am. It's what the camera sees. So
I just have to like comment, because you describe yourself as a spaz, and this seems like the opposite of what a spaz could possibly do. I mean, this is like amazing.
I don't know. I think it's like if you practice enough, you can sort of, it just takes practice. That's all. I feel like the harder part to puppets is like making them look alive. Like, I feel like, you can practice like technique, and you can practice like lip sync. You can practice, you know, big important thing to keeping a puppet alive is like looking like your puppet is making your puppet look like they're actually looking at the thing they're supposed to look at. Cause it's a magic trick. Like if you, you know, it's just like a sleight of hand trick. It's not going to work from all angles. A dead, lifeless doll is not going to look alive from all angles either. So depending on where the camera is, you have to constantly be readjusting to make sure that puppet is looking into the eyes of the person it's talking to, or looking at the box that it's opening. And it's totally a magic trick. But the thing that I feel like is toughest to kind of teach is making it look alive. Like, you know, like, does it feel grounded? Because there's nothing underneath the puppet. Like oftentimes there's no legs.
Right.
Does it feel grounded? Is it breathing? Is it, you know, does it have like a light behind the eyes? You know, even though it's just a thing. You know.
Well, there is like a certain amount of excitement. You know, when a Sesame Street character or a Muppet, like when they get really excited about things, it's not just, there's nothing wooden about it. It's this really nice, fluid excitement is the only way you can describe it.
And it's incredibly hard to teach. I mean, like I am still learning how to sort of hone it. But yeah, it's a whole other thing. And like watching some of the greats get to do it, like when Marty Robinson does Snuffy, it's one of the best things, because like he's not on every single episode. It's mostly like, you know, Elmo and Cookie and Grover and Abby. Snuffy makes an appearance sometimes, and when he does, all the phones come out, and everyone's like, "Stop it!" Because he's as big as you want him to be. And Marty walked me through. He walked us through how much what controls what on Snuffy. And he's in there playing like a one-man band, pretty much. There's like a PVC pipe that controls Snuffy's trunk, and different mechs that he needs both hands to use to blink his eyes and turn them left and right. And then he's got to pull out his hand and shove it into Snuffy's bottom lip to flap it open. And even though he's manipulating stuff, he's when the wizard, the curtain gets pulled and he's pulling all these
Don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. That's what I think there's going on inside this giant puppet. It feels like a living, breathing, sympathizable, lovable character. And that's puppetry. So just
getting back to it, and that's the most exciting conversation I've had, just the inside of how that works. So then you were pulled back for this workshop, and now your job is you said pretty much full-time puppetry.
Well, I'm sure I'll go back and forth to post-production just because there's not a ton of puppet work out there, but this because especially with computer graphics, being way more popular than puppets. But this year it seems that there is this weird resurgence of puppets, which is great. So we'll see. But yeah, I, get called in every once in a while to do assist stuff or background stuff. And then last year I was actually cast as my own character. Sesame Street launched a few years back Julia, who is a puppet with autism. And this last year, they unveiled her family. And so late last December, I was cast as Julia's mom, Elena, nice. Which is an insane opportunity. I get the email saying "Oh, we need you to come to the workshop so we can fit you." I'm like, fit me for my own budget. It's like a dream come true. And I get to play a mom, and I am a mom. Yes. I was literally 3 months pregnant, I think, on my very first day of Sesame Street. I had a honker do my birth announcement. And so it's been interesting trying to navigate being a mom and shifting towards a new profession, especially a not super steady one. I'm going to be 40. I have a toddler and I'm going to be a starving artist now. Thanks. Bye-bye. But this year has been great. So I was cast as Julia's mom, Elena. And then this year I was an ensemble member of this new show that is launching. Actually, by the time this podcast has come out, it will have launched, called The Helpsters on Apple TV Plus. And that show is super awesome. I'm really excited about it. The showrunner, Tim McKeown, is, he was the show creator of Odd Squad, which is this Emmy Award winning kids show. He was a writer on Adventure Time, Gravity Falls, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends.
Oh, those are all the good ones. Others. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all the best ones.
Yes.
So he's incredibly creative, funny, he's kind, he's an incredible leader. And so he created this puppet show for Apple TV Plus, where this team of monsters, they run a shop where people come in with their problems and they help solve them. But they solve them through the use of coding language. And so it's not a math, ones and zeros show. They sort of use the vocabulary of coming up with a plan and executing a plan, debugging the plan.
And that's all wrong. Fantastic stuff. As a mother myself, we do watch things like that, and I can see firsthand how well the children absorb it. So, and they love
yeah.
it. Yeah.
And all that stuff that we do on the show, if that vegetable is green, then it's healthy for you, or whatever, the if and then, well, if you go to sleep, then we can, watch the show in the morning.
The truth tables for toddlers.
Yeah, yes, it is. And so if then, you know, what's the other, like, looping a sequence, or, you know, the word sequence, you know, like the order in which things go. So it's that. But, you know, we have like amazing celebrity guests. It's really weird and funny and awesome. The puppets were built by Monkey Boy Productions, who do a lot of stuff for Saturday Night Live, and they look like no other puppets I've ever seen before. And so
I'm really
did that
excited to see it.
It's real. I gotta say, like, I enjoy it. Like, I think it's hilarious. I know we had an amazing time working on it. And so I got to do a lot of little one-off characters. But my primary job ended up becoming this weird thing that wasn't, like, they didn't know that they were going to need this, at the beginning of the season. But one of the characters is a giant walk around costume, like what, you know, like a Big Bird or a Barney. Right. Giant orange monster, named Heart. And the way that Big Bird works, sometimes you see both of his arms moving, right? Right. It's because Matt has, you know, Carol Spinney originated the character. You are standing up with wearing Big Bird's legs as your pants and Big Bird's feet as your shoes. They lower the top half of Big Bird onto you, and you have your right arm stretched into his mouth, so flapping, and I believe the eye blinks are up there too. And then your left arm is in Big Bird's left hand. The way that they move his right arm, because you can't fit somebody else behind him or inside, right, is there's like a clear monofilament that is clipped to or pinned to from his left hand, goes all the way up to his beak, and then all the way down to his right arm. And so you imagine just like the counterbalance, like every time you pull your left hand, your right hand is going to sort of like be pulled up. I don't know if that I'm literally doing the motion in my big kitchen.
It's interesting because I have seen, you know, just certain like documentaries. I mean, we grew up obviously in the same time period, and I watched countless documentaries. I mean, and I remember actually being in Robbins Lane School and hearing about Jim Henson's passing.
Yes, because we were in 5th grade when he passed. Yes, and I was so bummed.
Devastated.
I was like, I wanted to work for him one day. Yeah.
Well, in spirit, now you are, which is, you know, I mean,
I know, which is crazy. I really was like, maybe I'll get to be like a production assistant on at the company, you know, at the office. Like that's real. I submitted like a application for an internship in college and got rejected. I'm like, oh, but like, you know what I mean? But I thought I just wanted to work for him. You know, he never dreamed in a million years.
He seemed like such an incredible mind. And I raised my own kids on Fraggle Rock. Which I know, which is, was produced in different languages. I know that there was a different doc depending on where you were in the world. And that show is so incredible about like empathy and just understanding and where it ends. Yes. I mean, we've watched it so many times together. Where it ends is not at all what you think is going to happen when you first start watching the show. It has like this really nice ending, and it's so difficult to stick an ending in anything, let alone a children's show.
As we found out, Game of Thrones last season, but
I don't even want to get into that. That is
I don't want to get into that
whole other can of worms.
I didn't know that Fraggle Rock ended. I thought it was just like they did.
It was around the time I became a mom, you know, and Fraggle Rock was on Hulu at the time, and my husband and I really latched onto it. You know, we remembered it from when we were children, and that kind of led to finding the documentaries just about how Jim Henson worked and how he really revolutionized puppetry and puppeteering. And
you really did.
And he really just like his whole like method for what he wanted to express.
No, it's cool. I mean, there's only like a handful of Muppeteers who still work now, who worked with Jim Henson back in the day. In fact, like, I don't know, there was a bunch actually. Well, no, that's not true. Three on Helpsters, that have worked with Jim Henson. And it's such a legacy. Like just last week, so just to finish what it is I do, because it ties back to this. So Heart is a giant orange walk around monster played by an incredible performer from Canada. Her name is Ingrid Hansen, and she's become one of my closest friends. Heart is gender non-binary, and so we refer to Heart as they.
Yes.
Which is amazing. And so anywho, they had the monofilament sort of up Heart's left arm into their chin and into their right hand, to kind of like counterbalance and keep the right arm sort of wiggling and a little bit alive, just like Big Bird. But at some point they like needed the right hand to also grab something. I forgot what the first thing was that we had to grab, but they cut a seam. Like imagine like cutting the seam sort of behind your shoulder in your t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I slipped my right arm through the back. And basically my job for the rest of the season, for the most part, ended up being hiding. So, I would hide behind Heart. We would do our dance, or we would open up a magazine, or we'd pull like hold up a tree, a plant or something like that. And then like, as the season went on, we would get more bolder. And so we started like walking together and like kind of crossing frames together.
Wow.
And it was just this weird job of like me making different shapes with my body, based on where the camera was. And just like, say for example, there was like one take where Heart was like dancing around, and they took the jib camera, and we're just like floating that camera up and to the left and down and right. And they just wanted coverage of Heart dancing. And so, oh my gosh, this is like my worst nightmare. So the jib is like moving up and down and around Heart, and I'm looking down at the monitor that's on the floor. And based on where I see the camera is moving, I'm like twisting and leaning away from it so that Heart is always directly in front of, between me and the camera. And so it was a weird, awesome job. I feel like I lost a couple pounds. Like spent a lot of time doing weird squats and twisting. And then if Heart was suddenly turning to their profile like side and walking out of the frame, like I did this like death drop where I would just like pull, like gesture, drop the arm and pull out and just drop to the floor. and then I was just disappeared. I was just gone. So anywho, it was really fun, very specific job. And neither of us Ingrid had never done a walk around character, and I certainly had never done a right hand for a walk around character before, but it was really fun. And then last week we were doing some photo shoots with Heart, and they brought in John Barrett. He is a photographer who was like Jim Henson's photographer of choice.
Wow.
Back in the day, this actually, it all connects. Jim Henson, there's a building called the Jim Henson Carriage House. It's on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And it's still owned by the Jim Henson Legacy, and his charity work runs out of there. Like the sort of archival work is out of there. And there's a big sort of studio space where they gifted to artists who are workshopping things or events. And it used to be where Jim Henson's like sort of company started. They were renting out this big carriage house for photo shoots, and they were renting it so much that they ended up buying it. And that's where, like, I mean, back when Muppets was like a 10-person company, was held out of. And so John Barrett, he is so good. I don't know what he does. He's just the way that he lights the puppets and shoots like their eye line, but they look alive. They're amazing. And, so we're, inside Heart posing, and he keeps saying front door, back door, zen, restaurant. And we didn't know what the heck he's saying. And finally on the second day of the shoot, we're like, what does that mean? He's like, oh, like, because our left and our rights were always changing, like depending on where we shot at the carriage house. Front door is my left always. Back door is my right always. Wow. There was a Zen meditation center to the left of the whatever on this side of the carriage house. And there was a restaurant that we all used to go to on the other side. We're like, how would we have known that? He's like,
wow.
that's just, and it's not an industry standard, but it's like, that's how Jim did it. It's like when in the Muppets, if you dance, like if you have a big group number where everybody's got to sway back and forth at the same time, like in that Muppety style, you always go right first. And if you ask, why do we always go right first? They say, because Jim always went right first.
That's it.
So
wow.
it's like those pieces of like his legacy are like, I mean, obviously it's everywhere. This wouldn't be here. None of it would be here without his genius and his influence. But it's like, it's really fun to see like little bits or like, my friend Peter Lynch, who is my teacher and now my friend, he is the new Ernie. And, there were a couple Ernies on the puppet wrangling table during a shoot, and he picked up one. He's like, no, that's not the Jim one. There's the Jim one. And he opens it up, and like the tag was like from 1981 or something like that. This was like an original body from like the early 80s. He's like, it's got the Jim Henson juice on it, so I'm going to use this one for the shot. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so great. Yeah, it's been a dream. And then like last year I got to be on, I don't know if you want to prompt.
Are we going to talk about Mr. Rogers?
Hell yeah, let's talk about Mr.
So
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, and just as a tidbit, Mr. Rogers didn't plan on going into TV either, from what I read. Go on. Yes. He was a music major. He was a jazz piano. All the sort of like piano bits that you hear on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood were written by him. He was a kid who was bullied as a youngster. They called him Fat Freddy because he was, a chunky little kid. But he had a beautiful, supportive family, including his grandfather, who told him, you made this day a special day just by being you. And his last name was McFeely. Mm-hmm. And so he saw this sort of like new technology, this new communications technology called television, and saw that the only thing that was really available to kids was like shows where people were shooting at each other or where clowns are throwing pies in people's faces and laughing at them. And he's like, this is terrible. If we could only use this as tool as a way to relay a message of care to children. And so that's when he got into public television. And of course it became nationally, syndicated because it was the best. Right. But his life is incredible. And he went to TV not for the glory of it, but to, relay the message to children that they are lovable and that their feelings are not to be, pushed away, but to be recognized, named, and talked through. And no one was doing that. Certainly no one was telling little boys to talk about their freaking feelings in the 60s. Not at all. I mean, even
we're
still.
Yeah, we're still sort of dealing with masculine toxicity. And so he was at the forefront of that. And that's why the two of them are like Jim Henson and Mr. Rogers. Like they tapped into the weird private world of children where everything is like bigger and scarier and more magical, but we kind of like forget it along the way. And like, grown-ups are quick to, we have so much stuff going on that we're, we want to tamp it down and quiet it down and control it. And, we lose a little bit of that. And that's why Fred Rogers and Jim Henson were such heroes.
One thing I think that's amazing about them, and, I hope you'll agree, is that nothing that they did spoke down to the children.
No. Right. Jim Henson's like, I love Sesame Street. It's always part of my heart, but there's a special place for the stuff from the 70s and the 80s that we grew up with. It was weird, There's a little bit more stringent, curriculum guidelines now, but
I always,
back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, I always say that, and this is like completely different than that, but like children's entertainment, like it wasn't fooling around. And when you see the first episodes of Mr. Rogers, he talked about he dealt with serious stuff. He was not messing around.
Stuff. No, death and divorce and
racism,
you know, in his gentle way, racism.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think the assassination of, was it Robert Kennedy?
Yeah. Who wants to teach their kid what the word assassination means, you know? But he wasn't afraid of that because he respected them. And I think if you sort of go into his life, you will just keep learning incredible tidbits about him.
So what did you do in the movie set?
So there's a new movie coming out. The working title was You Are My Friend, but what is it called now? Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, yes. I think it is. So A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood stars Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. The main character is actually a journalist played by Matthew Rhys from The Americans. And Chris Cooper is in it and a bunch of other amazing actors. Basically, it's the story of, it's like a story that happened a lot in Mr. Rogers' life, where like somebody from the media, a journalist or a TV producer would reach out for an interview or a quote. And then suddenly Mr. Rogers is turning it, you know, around and asking them questions and then, you know, developing this like deep friendship that would last like for years and years and years. And so this is one of those stories. This guy, I believe wrote for Esquire and they became friends and he, you know, lessons from Mr. Rogers, like sort of helped him work through issues that he was having in his own life. And so I got to puppeteer for one day. I do have to say that like, if my scene is in the movie, I'm in it for very, very little time. There is a dream sequence where, all the puppets come up. I won't give it away, but I got to be X the Owl in this dream sequence and spend a late night about crotch high to Tom Hanks and Chris Cooper. And it was amazing.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, it was my first movie and we got like these teeny tiny trailers, but we're so excited to have a trailer. And Tom Hanks is everything you want him to be. He is kind and gracious and charming and funny.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a couple weeks ago, I got to do another cool puppety thing. I got to be on Saturday Night Live,
which is so cool.
Which is
so cool.
Again, a dream that I never dared to dream. So I mentioned Monkey Boys Productions. They built the puppets for Helpsters. Mark Petrosino, who's one of the, the co-owners of the company, builds. He was actually a puppeteer on Mr. Rogers as well. And that's where I met, became friends. And he also does the puppets, most of the puppets on Saturday Night Live. So anytime like you see a weird prop that moves, like say like a talking toilet or like a cat flying past a window in space, you know, like outside a rocket ship, or like the Sean Spicer podium that drove down the street. So his company builds all that stuff, and it's always last minute stuff because as I'm sure heard about Saturday Night Live, they just they're literally writing, creating, editing that week, and stuff comes up last minute and they have to figure out how to, make it come to life. Okay. So a week ago, I was at my daughter's best friend's birthday and I get a text saying, "Hey, do you want to do Saturday Night Live? It's for tonight. Call me right away." And so I call him back and I say, "I'm sorry, it's my daughter's birthday party tomorrow and I got to make goodie bags, so I can't do it today." And so I hang up and my husband's like, "Oh, who was that?" I'm like, "Oh, it was Mark Petrosino. He wanted to see if I could do SNL." And he's like, "Oh, it's Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Taylor Swift. How did you get such a hot ticket? You sure you don't want to go?" And I'm like, No, not to go see it, to puppeteer on it. And he's like, "You calling back right now? You oh my God, are you crazy?" I'm like, "But it's Quinn's birthday." I'm like, "I don't care." He's like, "Are you crazy? This is a once in a lifetime." I'm like, "Okay." And so it was the most surreal experience. I can't even describe it because at 1:30, I got the call and we rush home, make goodie bags and cupcakes for the next day. I get in my show blacks. I take the subway. We're in Queens. I take the subway out to 30 Rock. I get there around 5. they don't know where I'm going to be. They don't have a puppet yet. Like, I don't have a script. Like, I don't know what is happening. And so, like, they shoved me, like, around, like, 6:00. They, you know, see if I could fit under a coffee table. Basically, Mark calls me up because he would usually build and then puppeteer his own puppets. But he calls me and saying, like, apparently you have to be a Stephen Miller as a snake and pop out of a coffee table that I'm too big to hide under. Oh. Can you do it? I'm like, okay, Mark's a big guy. And so I get there and they're like, well, let's see if you can fit under this coffee table. And I'm like, okay, I do. And then I'm like, well, how are you going to control the puppet? I'm like, I don't know what kind of puppet I'm using, so I don't know. And they drill a giant hole in the middle of the coffee table. And then they give me like, it's like a child's toy. It's one of those things where it's like a big rod and there's an animal head on top and there's a trigger on the bottom. And it's just controlled by like string and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just pull it and it's like usually like a dinosaur head that sort of claps. And so they put this rod, like child's toy, and they're like, you good? I'm like, I guess. And then like suddenly all the actors are coming in. I see like Beck Bennett as Mike Pence. And he's like, are you going to be there the whole time? I'm like, hi, yes. Hi, Beck. I'm a big fan. And he's like, okay. And like, I'm like, what? But no one's told me what I'm doing or what my
wow.
All I know is that I'm Stephen Miller. And I hear like, Mr. Vice President, here's Stephen Miller. So I popped the snake, got a little coffee table hole. And then they give me like a script. And apparently I was supposed to be like lip syncing to Parcel Tongue the whole time. I'm like, I don't. And then exiting at a certain point. I'm like, no one told me anything. And so literally it was like, they ended up putting a body around the little rod and painting it. And they're literally painting it as like the audience is coming in. They're taping the dress rehearsal. And we're hearing over the loudspeaker, 15 minutes till dress, 10 minutes of dress rehearsal, 5 minutes of dress. I'm like, can I I think I have to go run under a coffee table. So I take the snake as it's drying, run to the studio, and that set was right on the stage where like the monologue is like right in front of the band. I mean, this is surreal. Go underneath. I do my thing. And I'm trying to pop out you want to practice and make sure that you know the angle to get this like weird puppet out.
Right.
And the director comes over, he's like, no, don't give away the joke. I'm like, I want to know if I could do this and not find out that I can't. I'm on television. It was so stressful. And so, we do the way that SNL works. They do a 2-hour version, with more sketches, and they do it in front of a live audience. It's like a taped dress rehearsal. And it's crazy. It is pandemonium. They're building like whole sets and costumes and props and stuff based on like changes from the dress rehearsal. It's chaotic and it somehow all gets done. And so,
it's just so, no, I was just going to say, it's just so awesome to hear. I mean, you, like you were saying in the beginning, this wasn't at all what you expected. But
no,
but it's amazing.
No.
It's amazing.
I'm literally in the cold open of Saturday Night Live, hiding under a coffee table, like 2 feet away from where Beck Bennett and Judy Kate McKinnon are yelling live from New York. It's Saturday night. Like I was right there at their feet. It was so crazy. It's definitely like a highlight moment for me. And then you're not even 40 yet. And I'm not 40 yet. And like, so the crazy thing is like, we'd watched the dress rehearsal already. So after, the cold open's the first thing. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'll go home now. And so I say, get on the subway. Half an hour later, I'm home. My husband's like watching the Weekend Update. And like, it was like, I was just there. And like in less than 8 hours, I found out that I was in SNL, got shoved into a coffee table without any idea of like what the heck I was going to do, was on live TV for the Saturday Night Live cold open, and then went home before midnight. I was like, what is my life right now? It's been a really great year. I mean, not to say like puppetry is like a fickle, very niche, sort of art form, at least for TV and film. There's not a lot of it. so it's not to say that like it's just on the up and up, but yeah, it's crazy. I never thought that like I would be shifting career, professions like at this point in my life, and definitely not to something as like not super steady puppetry. But I mean, you only live once, and it's so much fun, and I'm very lucky to have a supportive husband who's like willing to be single dad during like 15-hour shoot days. And, without him, I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff.
I mean, it's pretty amazing because I do think, just in general, Syosset, I mean, we pride ourselves on having really good school systems, and we have so many people who've gone on to do crazy things. But I think what's amazing about your story is that you've learned to kind of embrace chaos. And it's worked for you so well, and you're doing cool things. In a weird way, I feel that reality TV also prepped me for the chaos. I mean, props to Jack Demassey. Jack Demassey's still at Syosset, right? Yes.
Anybody?
Yes. I took his TV production class, but is he still? If he's not, the TV studio where he taught out of is still there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That was like my early TV stuff. So little background about me. I started at NYU and I didn't do great, and I lost my financial aid and I had to leave. And this is like the biggest shame, especially coming from like a blue ribbon school where all of my friends went to like fancy schools and, went on to get law degrees and whatever. I'm like, crap. Like I came back home with my tail between my legs and went to Nassau Community College. And I was like so ashamed. Like you don't want to, like a Korean immigrant kid going to community college is like, you might as well, like, I don't know, whatever. Don't want to shame, whatever. You know what I mean? And so I went and took like a TV production class there, and Jack Demassey was there. He taught, part-time at the college. And he's like, "Is that Kathy Kim?" And I'm like, "Jack." And the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, well, I'm going to say the PG way of saying it. He goes, "You messed up, didn't you?" But just pretend instead of messed up, it's like a 4-letter word that starts with a letter F.
Yeah.
And so, I laughed also. And the thing is, I had been so ashamed of like flunking out of NYU and having to sort of start over again. But like, honestly, that was like the first step, like Jack being like, "You messed up. Wow, welcome. Let's learn about TV production,"
He was amazing.
It was like that sort of, he was. And it was that, and I don't know it at the time. I'm like 20 years old. I think my life is over, like you're a baby. You have so many other options to you. You don't even know. And Jack obviously knew this. And like, it was that first step of forgiveness of like, embrace it. Like it passes in the past, like move forward,
Yeah.
And the same thing when like I left Nickelodeon, I was like, this is where I wanted to be. And now I don't know what to do. And like,
yeah.
Ended up at this production company called Sharp Entertainment, where they did a lot of like reality stuff and lifestyle and food and travel things. And, I just kept getting hired on shows. And the thing about like reality, non-scripted stuff, and I say unscripted in very heavy quotation marks, is that like, because it's not like a script, we're kind of just dealing with footage and putting it together and like, a way that makes sense, like story wise or character wise or story arc wise. The thing is like, because there's so much footage and because we're manipulating it, it can change in a million different ways. And so depending on how many people have seen that cut, there are that many ways to recut an episode of TV, for unscripted reality stuff. And it's frustrating because it's like we live in a digital world. So technically we could make it happen, but it takes time and a lot of effort to make these changes. But if you don't have like, if you're too precious about your work, or if you're not adaptable, or if you can't roll with the punches, you cannot work in reality TV, or else you will take a long walk off a short pier. Cause it's frustrating. You take like a ton, like hours and hours and hours of footage, and you go through it and you put together like what you think is like the best, funniest, or most entertaining version of a story. And then the network comes and goes, meh, you know. And then you got to find a new order out of like, you know, you got to put the puzzle together in a different way after you were sure this was the way to do it. So I feel like that has prepared me for all sorts of stuff. It's just like, well, you know.
And shout out to Jack DeMassey.
Shout out to Jack DeMassey. Like, I don't think I ever told him that, but like, because we keep in touch on Facebook.
Well, then tell him to listen to this.
Yeah, he was great. He was one of those teachers that was like everybody's friend, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he definitely seemed like approachable.
So before we end with, this has been amazing, and just all of your insight into everything you've done, and just, you know, I mean, I think it should be an inspiration, not just to the Syosset people who listen to this, but just in general, that, you know, you don't know where life is going to take you. You might trip and fall on your face, but you can also get up, and if you go with things, there's directions.
There's, you know, the door. What am I trying to say? Oh, I tried to give like this Confucius wisdom, and it came out.
Well, the one door opens, the one door shut. I something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But there is no closed doors. Like the closed door is in your mind. Like it's in your mind. Like there's a million other paths, and you know, for me, I feel like my story is not just, you know, it's about seizing the opportunities, you know, like reshifting gears, but also honestly, it's about community and friendship and support. And because like without my husband, Brian, I would not be able to do any of this stuff. He's been like a support, and he, you know, watches our kid Quinn. He was the one who said, like, you pick up the phone and call Mark, and you, like, you know, you tell him you can do Saturday Night Live, you know?
Right.
Like, he's, like, the person who believes in me. But on top of that, like, along the way, I've met friends and made connections, both in reality and in the puppet world. It's like, if you make friends everywhere you go, you have connections to all these other places. And the more you're the type of person people want to work with, the more they'll remember you on the next project. And like, I can't remember the last time I did for reality work. I can't remember the last time I was on a job interview. All of my jobs have been because like a friend was like, oh, I know someone, you know? Yeah. I feel like that is, to me, and it's not for everybody, but for me and any success that I've had in my life has been all through connection. Like the creator or the puppet director, puppet captain, puppet builder for the Mr. Rogers movie is a very good friend of mine, Spencer Lott. He's incredibly talented, but he knew that, you know, he called on certain people to audition based on who he liked to work with. On Sesame, you know, they brought in some of the people from the workshop to right hand and assist, but it's the people that the Muppeteers like to work with, you know, kind of like to bring into the fold of their weird family. Those are the ones that get called in. I just got called in. I'm going to be doing the Today Show, like assisting for Abby or Elmo or Cookie.
Exciting.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, for me, it's about community and connection. The more people want to work with you, the more they'll bring you onto other stuff. And, I don't underestimate the power of like just making friends and building a community around you, because nothing happens alone. I'm not doing this. Like, I didn't get to do Saturday Night Live or get to do Sesame Street, get to do Helpsters because like I locked myself in a room and I studied puppetry until I was the best darn puppeteer in the whole world, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and there's plenty of people who believe that, and plenty of people who, you know, are technically probably better than I am, you know, a lot of people actually. But it's like, you know, if you can get on the same page as your showrunner, get on the same page as, you know, your director, you know, that's like the most valuable trait that you can bring onto a job for me.
Thank you so much. Before we go, what's your favorite diner in Syosset?
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, I mean, I want to say On Parade because I know all the popular kids in our grade went to On Parade, but really, but truly, I mean, I'm a celebrity diner.
Yes,
through and
because
through.
everybody says
Celebrity
On Parade, and I was like, On Parade was really more like where, I don't know, like Celebrity, maybe because it's closer to my house, but Celebrity is the one I most remember.
Celebrity was close to my house, and On Parade was closer towards like where 25A is, and like Martintown and North Side. And so I feel like I stopped going there because like all the cool kids went there. I do like it because it feels older and it feels more like dinery. Yes. I haven't been there recently. I don't know if they renovated or not, but Celebrity, that was my diner. Yes. Also, can I make like an unofficial nomination for Friendlies? Yes. For Friendlies. Oh, I think Friendlies absolutely counts, especially since Friendlies, in general, they're starting to become fewer and a little bit harder to find. And the Friendlies in Syosset is still going strong. It's great. I mean, the food is terrible, but the ice cream is awesome. I went recently with my daughter. Yes. My kids love it there. And I was like, yeah, Friendlies, bring on the clam chowder and the tuna melts. And I'm like, oh, this is not good food. This is a lot better in my memory, but the ice cream is still awesome. And they have a giant kids menu full of all the crap that they like. And so they're happy there. But no, Celebrity is my jam. I feel like they have like healthy options there. Like the same people who've been greeting you at the door have been there since I was in high school. They have a gigantic menu, even though like I'm always tempted to go like, off road. I'm like, oh, should I get seafood? And my friends are like, no, what are you doing? Get a burger. But yeah, cool. Celebrity Diner. And then Bagel. I mean, is there anywhere else besides Bagel Boss? Because I don't think so. Some people say Bagel Master, but Bagel Boss is 24 hours. And no, it's God. No, Bagel Master is fine. Bagel Master is the one on what's that road called? Like near the train station, right? Yes. My brother and I. So my brother's Victor Kim. He graduated in 2001 or 2. When we come home, that is the tradition. We have to go to Bagel Boss at least once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, and get ourselves a bagel sandwich with something, either like the whitefish salad or, lox and cream cheese, and get the little side salad. And then we always get a Dr. Brown's celery soda. And the bagels are always warm. They are delicious. My husband is from Jersey. And Jersey is also kind of known for pizza and bagels as well. But he's become a convert, and we folded him into the tradition. And so he'll bring it up too. Like, when are we going to Bagel Boss? Yes. That's awesome. He's been converted.
Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. I'm going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.